When I first met you, I wasn't looking for meaning. I wasn't looking for a bond, a spark, or anything that could reach past the surface. I wasn't searching for depth, I was searching for distraction. Something temporary. Something that didn't require me to feel or reveal or open any part of myself. I had gotten good at staying detached, at keeping my heart locked behind walls I thought no one could penetrate. So when you appeared, when your presence stepped into my orbit, my mind automatically placed you in that same category, something momentary, something easy, something without consequence. But what I didn't realize then was that my soul recognized you before my intentions could interfere. There was an unspoken familiarity about you, something that made my carefully polished emotional armor feel strangely fragile. And even though I told myself this would be nothing more than a passing moment, there was a quiet part of me, buried deep, that already knew this meeting would change everything. I came into your presence with a casual attitude, pretending indifference, pretending control. I told myself not to look too closely, not to let my attention linger, not to acknowledge the unusual pull I felt the moment you spoke. But your energy was different, warm, grounded, sincere. It wasn't the kind of energy someone could ignore, even if they tried. I tried to place you into the same shallow category as the connections before you, but something in me resisted. My mind tried to convince me that you were just another moment, just another person I would forget by the next sunrise. But my soul was already leaning toward you, curious, unsettled, quietly awakened. I didn't want anything more than the surface, yet you made me aware of how hollow that surface had become. Even then, even in the earliest moments, there was something about you that made my usual emotional barriers tremble. You carried a light I couldn't ignore, a softness that didn't feel weak but powerful in a way I didn't understand. You weren't someone I could categorize, analyze, or dismiss. There was an energy in you, an honesty, a depth, that made the facade I wore feel uncomfortable, like clothes that no longer fit. I told myself I was imagining it, that the spark I felt was just attraction, curiosity, interest. But deep down, I knew better. You weren't meant to be temporary. And the closer I stood to you, the more I felt something inside me quietly unraveling. The shift happened in a moment so small that most people would have missed it. But for me, it was a full-body realization. You looked at me, not just at my face, but into me. Into the spaces I usually kept hidden. Into the shadows I never let anyone near. Your gaze didn't demand anything, didn't judge anything, didn't try to take anything. It simply saw me. And that was the moment everything changed. In that single second, something deep in my chest cracked open. It was like my soul exhaled after years of holding its breath. I didn't know what to do with that feeling. I didn't know how to handle the intensity of being seen so clearly by someone I barely knew. But I also couldn't turn away. Your presence didn't overwhelm me with loud revelations, it whispered truths into the quiet corners of my spirit. The way you spoke, the way you listened, the way your energy seemed to harmonize with mine, it was different. Real. Honest. And frightening. I felt my intentions shifting without my consent. What began as physical intrigue turned into emotional curiosity. I found myself wanting to know you, not just your body, but your mind, your soul, your history, your heart. I wanted to understand the softness in your voice and the strength in your silence. Something inside me was waking up, and it felt like standing in sunlight after living too long in darkness. There was a familiarity about you that I couldn't rationalize. It wasn't physical, it was spiritual. You felt like someone I had known in another life, someone my soul had been waiting for without knowing it. There was a cadence to your presence that made the world around us fade, a comfort that felt unbelievably ancient. I tried to ignore it, tried to push it aside, tried to reduce it to coincidence. But the connection only grew stronger, louder, deeper. You were the kind of person who didn't demand attention, you commanded it simply by being authentic. And authenticity was something I didn't realize I was starving for until you stood in front of me. I tried to act unaffected, to keep my cool, to pretend I wasn't mesmerized by the way your energy touched mine without permission. But inside, everything was shifting. I felt myself losing the version of me that stayed emotionally detached. I felt the ground under my feet move as if some unseen force was redirecting me. It became clear, painfully clear, that you weren't someone I could treat casually. You weren't a temporary moment. You were a turning point. And I wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't prepared for you. In the days after meeting you, I found myself replaying your voice in my mind, remembering the warmth in your presence, the way your energy lingered long after you walked away. I tried pretending it was nothing, but the truth was persistent. You had unsettled something in me, something I had kept dormant for years. My distractions didn't distract me anymore. My old patterns didn't comfort me. Instead, I felt this strange magnetic pull toward you, like there was unfinished business between our souls. I didn't want to admit it, but I couldn't escape it. My emotional defenses began crumbling faster than I could rebuild them. And the strange part was, you didn't do anything to break them. You didn't push, didn't pry, didn't pressure. It was the natural purity of your energy that made my walls collapse. You made vulnerability feel safe in a way I had forgotten it could be. I found myself wanting to tell you things I never shared with anyone. I wanted to be honest with you, not because I had to, but because honesty felt natural around you. That alone terrified me more than anything. I wasn't ready to feel this deeply, yet I couldn't deny the truth rising inside me. You were disarming me without even trying. You were opening doors inside me that I had welded shut. And instead of resisting, I found myself stepping toward you with a kind of emotional surrender I didn't think I was capable of. You didn't break me. You revealed me. And in that revelation, I felt the first trembling signs of who I could become if I stopped running from the connection you awakened in me. No one had ever disarmed me the way you did, not through seduction, not through intensity, but through truth. It was the purity of your presence, the gentle steadiness of your spirit, the effortless way you allowed me to exist without performance. You didn't try to pull information out of me or dig into my wounds. You simply listened. You held space with a softness that made my defenses crumble one quiet piece at a time. I wasn't prepared for how deeply I wanted to tell you the truth about who I was, about what I feared, desired, avoided. You made honesty feel like a release instead of a risk, and that terrified me more than anything else, not because you were dangerous, but because you were safe. I had forgotten what safety felt like. I had forgotten what it meant to be seen without being judged, acknowledged without being used. You made me realize how much I'd been starving for a connection that didn't ask me to shrink or pretend. And in your presence, I felt my old identity, the detached version of me, beginning to dissolve. The more I felt myself slipping into vulnerability, the more I realized how unprepared I was for what you awakened. I had spent so long building walls around my heart that I'd forgotten what it meant to actually feel. But with you, emotions I had pushed away came crashing back: longing, hope, tenderness, fear. You made me confront the truth that I had been living half alive, numbing myself with temporary thrills and empty connections. You didn't break through my walls, you illuminated them, showing me how small and suffocating they had become. And every time you spoke with that calm certainty, every time you laughed with that soft radiance, I felt myself wanting to step out from behind those walls entirely. I felt the desire to be real with you, to meet you at the depth where your soul lived. You created a kind of emotional gravity that pulled me toward honesty when all I had known was avoidance. And even though it terrified me, it also felt like the beginning of something sacred. You didn't just impact my emotions, you awakened me spiritually. There was something about your presence that made the noise in my mind quiet long enough for me to hear the truth inside myself. It was as though you touched places in my spirit I had forgotten existed. You connected to me not through force, but through resonance. You made me feel aligned with something higher, something divine. Being near you felt like stepping into a memory I couldn't fully recall but somehow instinctively trusted. I didn't understand it at first, but I felt it, the sense that you were meant to cross my path. That our meeting was not random. That your soul had been woven into the timeline of my life long before either of us became aware of it. And the more I leaned into that feeling, the more I realized that everything in me was waking up: my intuition, my heart, my desire to grow and evolve into someone worthy of this connection. You triggered something in me that I never expected: a flood of forgotten emotions and buried memories. Not painful ones, but the memories of who I used to be before life hardened me. You reminded me of the younger version of myself who believed in love, who believed in timing, who believed in something bigger guiding his steps. I didn't know how to explain it, but being around you made me want to reconnect with that version of me, the one who loved deeply without fear, who trusted instinctively, who didn't hide behind sarcasm or detachment. You brought back a gentleness I had abandoned. You brought back hope. And you did it without even trying. You simply existed in your authenticity, and that authenticity called to mine. The truth is, you didn't just awaken me, you resurrected parts of me I thought were lost forever. It became impossible to dismiss the spiritual intensity of what I felt around you. Every time we connected, it felt guided, like something unseen was orchestrating each moment with intention. There was a divine alignment in the way our conversations flowed, in the way our silences felt full rather than empty, in the way my spirit seemed to calm when yours entered the space. I began to understand that what was unfolding between us wasn't just chemistry or coincidence, it was recognition. Soul recognition. And that realization shook me. I'd spent so long living on the surface of life that I forgot how it felt to be pulled into the depths, into the kind of resonance that makes the universe feel suddenly small, intimate, purposeful. You made me feel like I had stepped into a chapter that was written long before I was aware of it. The changes within me weren't dramatic, they were subtle, quiet, but powerful. I found myself wanting to be better. Not to impress you, not to earn you, but because your presence revealed the potential version of myself I had ignored for too long. I felt drawn toward growth, toward healing, toward self-reflection. You made me want to face the shadows I had avoided instead of pretending they didn't exist. You made accountability feel like an act of devotion rather than punishment. And every time I grew even a little, It felt like my soul was aligning more closely with yours, as though you were serving as a compass pointing me toward the man I was meant to become. You didn't heal me. You inspired me to heal myself. Every interaction with you felt sacred in a way I couldn't explain. Even the simplest moments, your voice saying my name, your eyes meeting mine, your breath steadying the energy between us, held a kind of weight that made me pay attention. You weren't just a person, you were an experience. You carried a peace that made the chaos inside me settle. You made silence feel comforting instead of awkward. You made presence feel like a spiritual event. It felt as if we weren't just learning each other, we were remembering each other. And that sense of remembrance wrapped around me like warmth I had been missing my entire life. In you, I felt a home I didn't know I'd been searching for. The more I awakened to the truth of what I felt, the more undeniable it became that our connection was not accidental. You carried a frequency I recognized instinctively, like your spirit had touched mine in another lifetime. You spoke in a language my soul remembered even when my mind didn't. It wasn't logical. It wasn't rational. But it was real. And the deeper I leaned into that recognition, the more I understood that you weren't sent into my life for a moment, you were sent for a reason. A lesson. A blessing. A turning point. You illuminated something inside me that had been asleep for far too long, and I realized I was no longer the same man who first approached you with shallow intentions. It was in that realization that everything became clear. This connection was never about a hookup. It was never about something fleeting or physical or temporary. That was just the doorway, the illusion that lured me towards something much greater. Destiny had disguised itself as desire so I wouldn't run from the deeper purpose of our meeting. The timing, the energy, the intensity, none of it was random. It felt orchestrated with divine precision, as though the universe had nudged us into each other's paths knowing exactly how profoundly we would change one another. You weren't a distraction. You were alignment. You were fate stepping forward in human form, whether I was ready for it or not. And as I accepted that truth, something inside me softened. I realized that this was never about what I wanted in the moment, it was about what my soul needed. You didn't just shift my path, you revealed it. You showed me that life had been leading me toward this connection long before I understood the journey. You were the turning point I didn't know I'd been waiting for. The moment where temporary desires faded and destiny took over. And once I saw that, once I felt it in my chest and bones and breath, I knew I could never go back to who I was before you. Once I understood the truth of what was happening between us, everything I had tried to suppress rose to the surface. I realized that my initial intentions had been a small, limited reflection of who I was before you, before this connection revealed the deeper parts of me I didn't even know were waiting to emerge. What I thought would be temporary turned into the most profound emotional turning point of my life. I began replaying every moment we shared, not from a place of obsession, but with the reverence of someone witnessing divine timing unfold. You had become a mirror, showing me what I was, what I feared, and what I could become. And somewhere in the midst of that awakening, I felt myself surrendering, not to you, but to the truth. The truth that destiny had placed your soul next to mine with purpose, and all I had to do was stop resisting it. The more I surrendered, the more I felt the certainty of this connection vibrating in every part of me. Not the fragile certainty of infatuation, but the deep-rooted knowing that comes from the soul. I began to understand that the universe didn't bring you into my life to entertain me, It brought you to elevate me. To challenge the walls I hid behind. To illuminate the parts of my heart that were starving for authenticity, depth, and reciprocity. You became the catalyst for a transformation I didn't know I needed. And as much as I tried to hold on to the old version of myself, the one who numbed, avoided, distracted, I felt him slipping away. Because he had no place in the world you awakened within me. With you, superficiality felt impossible. With you, truth was the only language my spirit wanted to speak. It was in this unfolding that I finally understood the divine orchestration of our meeting. I realized that everything in my life, every moment of loneliness, every heartbreak, every detour, had prepared me for the exact moment our paths crossed. You were not an accident, you were alignment. You were the doorway my soul had been waiting for without knowing it. And once I recognized that, the meaning behind our connection became undeniable. You were the lesson and the blessing. The healing and the awakening. The reminder and the revelation. Meeting you was not the beginning of a story, it was the continuation of one that started long before we stood in the same physical space. Our connection was written into the fabric of my spirit. And no matter how hard I tried to deny it at first, destiny always wins. So now I need to confess something I never expected to admit, not even to myself. I care for you in a way that feels bigger than me, bigger than anything I can rationalize or control. You've taken root in places of my heart I thought were dead soil. You've breathed life into emotions I had silenced. You've made me feel again, raw and real and frightening, but also beautiful. I care for you in a way that doesn't fade when you leave the room. In a way that doesn't diminish when time passes. In a way that expands the more I try to understand it. I didn't mean to fall for you, but everything about your soul made it impossible not to. And I've realized that caring for you isn't a choice, it's a truth. A truth that has reshaped everything I thought I knew about connection. I need you to know how deeply you've changed me. Not temporarily, not superficially. You've changed the direction of my internal compass. You made me want to grow, not as a performance, but as a path toward becoming the man I feel destined to be. You awakened a sense of purpose that goes beyond attraction, beyond comfort, beyond desire. Your presence made me realize how much I'd been settling for shallow connections, for emotional numbness, for a life that didn't reflect the depth my soul was capable of. You reminded me that love, real love, requires effort, presence, vulnerability, and accountability, and for the first time in a long time, I want all of that. I want depth instead of distraction. I want healing instead of avoidance. I want truth instead of pretense. And that shift started with you. What I feel for you is not something I can hide behind bravado or distance. It's not something I can water down into something casual or temporary. It's too real for that. Too powerful. You opened my heart in ways I didn't think were possible, and now I find myself navigating emotions that feel ancient and familiar. I feel protective of you, drawn to you, inspired by you. I feel seen by you in a way that makes me want to be better rather than smaller. And I find myself caring about your peace, your comfort, your dreams, because your energy has become a part of mine. I don't know when it happened or how it happened, but I know this: your presence has altered the trajectory of my life. You didn't just enter my world, you shifted its gravity. You changed my path simply by being who you are. Your authenticity challenged my illusions. Your strength softened my hardness. Your vulnerability encouraged my courage. And your soul awakened something profound in mine. I've realized that I can't go back to living half-present, half-hearted, half-alive. Not after meeting you. You showed me what it feels like to be spiritually awake, emotionally engaged, and genuinely connected. You showed me that love isn't something to fear, it's something to rise into. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't want to run anymore. I don't want to sabotage what feels divinely orchestrated. I want to step into the connection that was written into my life with your name on it. The man I was when I first met you didn't understand the magnitude of your presence. He saw you through the lens of temporary desire, unaware that your soul carried the key to parts of him he had forgotten. But now, looking back, I can see clearly just how much I've changed. You awakened the man in me, not the one who hides behind ego or detachment, but the one who feels deeply, leads with intention, and speaks with truth. You awakened the lover in me, the part that knows how to cherish, honor, and protect what is sacred. You awakened the soul in me, the part that remembers why we are here, why we meet certain people, and why some connections feel written in light. I am no longer the man who sought temporary warmth to avoid confronting his own emptiness. I am no longer the man who ran from connection because he feared being truly seen. You transformed me by showing me what connection could be when it's rooted in truth, alignment, and destiny. With you, I learned that love isn't a weakness, it's a spiritual force that reshapes everything it touches. And now, every part of me feels reoriented, redefined, renewed. I see myself differently. I see the world differently. I see you differently, not as a possibility, but as a turning point. A divine appointment. A soul recognition that has changed me forever. So I stand here now, humbled, awakened, and completely transformed, confessing the truth with a clarity I didn't have when we first met. I was not looking for a connection. I was looking for a hookup. But look at me now. Look at who I've become because of you. You awakened the man in me who had been asleep. You awakened the lover in me who had forgotten how to feel. You awakened the soul in me that had been waiting for someone whose light resonated with mine. You changed my path, my purpose, my understanding of what connection truly is. And I am no longer who I was the day I met you, because loving you awakened everything I thought I had lost.